Welcome everyone to another episode of TXL, as it's now being called, Talent Experience Live, your weekly look at all things HR, the hot topics, what you need to know, and it really pushing the conversation of things that are happening during this time and all the time. I'm joined, of course, by my lovely co-host, Natalie. Natalie, how are you today?
Good, Devin. How are you? The band's back together again. We haven't co-hosted in a while.
I know we both had our vacations, right? Which is
Mhm.
very topical for our conversation today. What exactly are we talking about today? Tell the people.
Yeah, so today is something that it's interesting because it's becoming more and more complex in our current environment here in the U.S. especially, which is taking time off in our current remote work situation. And you wouldn't think it would be complex, right? But the state of affairs and everybody getting used to working remotely, we've started to notice that people aren't taking as much time off. And we actually did a couple of polls on social media. So for those of you who participated, thank you. But our LinkedIn poll, the last time I checked, 49% of people said that they have not taken off from work since April of this year. It's July, Devin. It's July. That's a
It's
that's a
a
long time.
it's a very long time. I know we had a couple holidays in there. We had the 4th of July, we had Labor Day. One person who I know hasn't taken off is the man behind the scenes, the Wizard of Oz, Justin Devitt, who desperately needs some time off. But shout out to him real quick. That's a ton, and we're putting up these polls regularly on all social media platform, everything that we're streaming to you live from. So LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. Feel free to drop your results in there so that we can have some accurate information. But 50% is huge,
It
and
really is.
a Wall Street Journal article came out just a week or two ago that polled 3,000 companies, and they said that Zenefits, according to them, approximately 63,000 requests to take vacation have come through in between April and May. By comparison, last year alone, there were 120,000 requests. So that's slightly over the halfway mark that we just mentioned, but still right on par. And when we look at smaller organizations, they found that companies around the size of 1,300 employees, so mid-sized companies, shows that less than 14% of people have taken paid time off. I, that's amazing. And we are now in this time working from home where it feels like work-life balance has completely gone out the window, right? I made a joke to a couple phenoms a few weeks ago that it used to be we'd wake up out of bed, we'd check our phone and say, all right, I can solve this as soon as I get into the office. Now you wake up and check your phone and it's how many Zoom meetings is it going to take to get this issue resolved? And taking that time off is huge.
hmm We do have a live comment from one of our other colleagues who is usually behind the scenes with us, just rubbing it in a little bit that he's on the beach right now. So Tom Tate, hi. Thanks for tuning in on your vacation, and we hate you.
The beach does sound nice. The beach sounds fantastic, especially with how warm the weather has been. But so we heard from organizations as a whole. I saw yesterday the UK Prime Minister said that now is a great time to take a staycation, right? So it doesn't sound like Tom's taking much of a staycation. But Natalie, I know that you recently had one. What was that like? Was it nice to unplug a little bit?
It was, yeah. It was. I found myself drawn back to my laptop, to my computer a couple times, but it's a lesson learned that I need to draw better boundaries. Things happen, and it's okay to let go a little bit. So it was a learning experience for me, as well as also being relaxing. Right, taking a couple days off to myself, to hang out with my kids and my husband was also really, really nice. We had great weather, so that was really good. Um, and we want to give you guys a couple of different perspectives here today, right? So Devin and I both actually just came back from vacation. So we're going to talk a little bit about our experience in the pandemic world. But we also want to give a couple of additional perspectives. So you're going to hear from someone from HR and kind of from a policy perspective what are their thoughts around this, and what can other organizations be thinking about. And we're also going to bring on a manager to kind of talk about, how do you manage your team? What concerns do you have about your team? And we'd love to hear from you guys. So sound off in the chat if you are joining us live. Let us know what your thoughts are on taking vacation, on taking time off. What do you think your boss thinks about it? We'd love to hear those comments and kind of facilitate them throughout this whole conversation.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, right? And obviously all companies are different. We're going to hear from our perspective, right? But I know one of our guests later was planning on taking a vacation with some friends, and they had mentioned that if they went on said vacation, they would then have to quarantine from work for 2 whole weeks. So that's 2 more additional weeks of not being in the office. And if you work in some of these frontline positions that we are so thankful for during this pandemic, that's a tough ask, right? You're not only are you taking a vacation, all of a sudden your 1 week vacation turns into 3 weeks. And if you can't get paid during that time, that's really tough. So keep in mind, while we uncover this topic, that all organizations are going to be different. But I think the main point that we're going to try and cover today is that we all need that time, right? The burnout happens in the office and equally as much at home, right? Mm-hmm. We may think that when we're working from our home offices, everything is easy because there's no commute or anything like that. We can eat our own food out of our fridge. I've taken advantage of that a little bit more than I'd like to admit. But it's certainly different for every organization. And as offices begin to open up, I think it's important to start to look at this. So our first guest, Natalie, is Brad Goldor, who is Chief People Officer at Phenom People, and we will bring him on.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Brad. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Coming in all the way from the Netherlands.
Live here from Amsterdam in the Netherlands.
Brad, how was the travel when going over there? Since the topic is all around vacation, how did that look?
Yeah, the travel was pretty normal, actually, other than obviously having a mask on for a 7-hour flight was a little bit of a challenge. But otherwise, temperature check and medical form. But otherwise, it was pretty smooth. I was actually surprised, pleasantly.
Awesome. So talk to us about, we know our policy on time off, but talk to us about that policy about time off, kind of what Phenom's perspective is on that and why it's so important.
Sure. So we do an unlimited paid time off policy here at Phenom, and the philosophy and thought process behind that is to give the respect and freedom to the employee to use that time as they see fit. And so we want to use it as a tool. We know people are 28% more productive when they use all that vacation time. So we want that balance for everybody, and we want to help them create a strategy to use it responsibly. So, how do you set out a chart? Certain family vacations are planned, surgeries, and planning things around that to really make them use it as responsibly and efficiently as possible. And we really do want people to use it. So, the thought is, when people offer this and then it gets underused, we really don't want that to happen. So we monitor it by department, and we encourage the managers to coach their teams to come up with a paid time off strategy so they can actually maximize the use of it and the effectiveness of the team.
Brad, and we had a great comment from LinkedIn from Angela Staley. Taking time off helps you rejuvenate and focus on work better when you return. Burnout is real, but taking the time off for yourself to recharge and live life to the fullest makes a huge difference. And I think that's exactly what you're saying there. And it's awesome to hear that from the chat. So we've established the unlimited PTO, but has that changed since COVID-19, since the pandemic has entered the picture?
Sure. So the policy obviously hasn't changed, but people's usage of it has gotten a lot more challenging. And so, with the blurred lines between work and home, it's so much harder to make sure you're using that. And it's the work and the personal calendar need to sort of really merge, and you have to force scheduling that time off and really put it on the calendar. It's got to be in your face. Set the reminder. You've set boundaries, whatever strategies work for you to put those boundaries in place, whether it's having family remind you, whatever technology you need to remind you and put things in place, but putting the snooze on Slack or the notifications from Slack, whatever strategies you need to deploy to really define those lines, because you don't necessarily have to leave the country or leave the state or anything, but you need to leave the digital footprint for a minute and get away from even, I saw one great story, decorate your bathroom with candles and flowers. It can feel like you're, away on vacation. So coming up with strategies to really, again, right, separate that work and home, because it has gotten so blurred.
Yeah, it's so important to create those boundaries and encourage it with others. So I'd love to hear kind of the difference in approach, if there is any, since you're international now, right? So across the sea, the pond, whatever it is, what differences are you seeing there?
Sure. So in Europe as a whole, I'll generalize, but they place a big emphasis on vacation time. It is important, it's expected, and it's just part of the culture. And if people don't use vacation, they're surprised. And so it's just coming from a different lens where the environment and the culture here promotes taking that time off, and it's makes it guilt-free, it's expected. And people are away on holiday, you'll hear, for the entire month of August pretty much here. And so, but as we know, again, it does rejuvenate you and it gives you that balance. And if the ultimate goal is productivity, right, then you need to work this in and make sure that it's a priority. And quite honestly, I think Europe has it as a better priority than the US does.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brad, and the chat is going off right now, which we love to see. And a question came in that I certainly want to ask you, Brad, from Ward here. So thank you so much for the comment. If it's unlimited, how do you know if you are taking too much time or not enough?
So that should come down to clear communication between you and your manager. Hopefully you're having some sort of weekly one-on-ones or monthly feedback sessions, and hopefully you know where you stand as far as your job performance. And at a previous job I worked at, they called it disciplined freedom. And so I thought that sums it up pretty well as far as, do what you want, take care of your stuff, and do what you need to do. And so, and I think that's the philosophy behind the paid time off policy as well, is, right, it's here. Use it as a tool. If you need to get your kids at 2:00 on a Tuesday afternoon, but you have to take a call at 8:00 that night to balance it, then by all means. Or if you need to take days off for this or that, it's there to be flexible. That's really the, again, disciplined freedom, I think, really underlies that philosophy.
And Brad, one of the things that I've noticed in some of my conversations is that when people have that use it or lose it kind of mentality with vacation, a lot of times, as we mentioned, people aren't taking vacation right now. So when we approach the tail end of the year, you may have 3 times more people taking off time, and you then have to scramble to make sure that you're covered on all ends. So by allowing them to take vacation when they prefer, I think is better than not losing it at the end of the year. And another comment came in from Jeff, which I think is interesting, and I'll kind of pose it to the two of you, which is, it's interesting to think about people who, since we are so digital right now, that may be vacationing at their lake homes or on the beach, but still logging in, making it look like they work. Would you both kind of still consider that a break or a vacation if they're still around their computers? And Natalie, you saying that you couldn't necessarily get away, I think that's a perfect question.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. I mean, I do have a vacation scheduled for a week at the beach. I don't know if I'll be dialing into TXL that week, like Tom. But it's the fact that this situation has given people the option to work from wherever they want, I think is a newfound sense of freedom for some people, which I think is really cool. And especially for us, with unlimited PTO, or without, if we didn't have unlimited PTO, you can go somewhere with your family. You could go up the mountains here in Pennsylvania, and still be connected if you absolutely have to be, but you're just changing things up a little bit, which I think is a really good point to consider.
And Brad, the next question that I have for you is, have you taken any time?
So yeah, thank you for asking. I appreciate that. And so part of my trip here to Amsterdam, since I had been living here for a year, is to finish things up here and pack my stuff and send it home. And I am taking some time with my son as well. We are going to make sure that we get to the Rijksmuseum, which is one of the most popular here. And so that was something that we missed. So we're going to make sure to get to that. So I will be taking some vacation over here. And unlike the US, it is a lot more in control over here with the pandemic. And so very few masks and a lot more normalcy. So we're going to enjoy some of that for the next couple of weeks. And that will be, I'll consider that my vacation. And one other thing I did also want to mention before I was off, something that we did at Phenom that I thought was really helpful was we gave I guess you could call it a virtual day off, but we really wanted to give people that mental health day. And I was pleasantly surprised at how appreciative everybody was of that. Even though we have an unlimited time, I think giving people the freedom and taking away some of the guilt about maybe not having to check in, I think was relieving for everybody. And so that was a good experiment that I think we did. And we'll look to do another one in the future as a result of it. But I thought that was also just a good time, a non-scheduled, out of cycle, paid day off, where again, it gives everybody the freedom to really take that mental health day. We mean it. I want to give you that permission. And I think that's what people need, is that extra, layer of psychological safety to say it is okay to take that day. It doesn't mean you're not productive. It means you're going to be more productive. And so I think we have to change the mindset a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I appreciated it. And it was nice to hear from the company that, hey, the office is closed. Like, we are closed. And I think it did. It just, that extra push was like, oh, I need this time, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So Brad, on that point, for organizations that are looking to do something like that, or managers are looking to do something like that, how would you suggest approaching upper management or the C-suite to introduce one of those days and to have that actually happen?
I think you have to get creative around it, and on maybe the timing. Maybe there was people burn out after a particular project, or tacking it on to a holiday weekend, making it a 4-day weekend instead of a 3-day weekend, right? And so I think packaging it up and presenting it, and again, sharing the data on productivity when people have days off will also help sell it internally. But I think the way that you package it up and present it makes all the difference.
Awesome. Brad, thank you so much. This has been tremendously insightful. We really appreciate you taking the time. Any final parting shots, any last second words that you'd like to throw out there?
Yeah, I always, the one thing that has gotten me through most of this is try to have the positive attitude. We're living through craziness, and just acknowledge that and embrace it, and just try to stay positive, because it's crazy. And so let's just acknowledge and embrace that and stay positive as you can. Stay safe out there, everybody, and grin and bear with it as long as we have to.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again,
Brad.
My pleasure.
All right, so there we have it, the C-level executive chatting to us about time off. For those of you just joining us, this is TXL Talent Experience Live, and today we're talking all about vacations during pandemic. If you have any thoughts, comments, feel free to sound off in the chat. That is what makes live so special. This isn't a webinar. This isn't a podcast. We love your interaction. And Natalie, I know we have another guest. Who's coming on next?
Yeah, so Jonathan Dale, hey, how are you? JD is our manager expert here to talk to us a little bit about teams and kind of what that dynamic has been looking like since the pandemic, and helping encourage the team to take time off, and really just helping with overall mental health, right? I mean, this is a stressful time.
Yeah. Hey, first of all, Devin, Natalie, thank you for welcoming me back on Talent Experience Live. I love being here, and I'm happy to be as transparent as I can be with our audience and with you guys around this topic of taking vacation, not taking vacation, rest periods, whatever.
JD, we love having you on. You are our favorite reoccurring guest, and that's not because you're our only reoccurring guest, but it is spectacular. We will have to make you up a T-shirt or something like that for the next time that you come on.
Right.
But the first question that I have for you is, how have you been working with your team to encourage time off during this time?
Okay, so that's a pretty easy question. How have I encouraged? I haven't really done anything, quite frankly. The pandemic hit, and at Phenom, we happened to have and been planning for months prior to the pandemic our big user conference. And so that conference happened. But when we're planning a user conference, I'd say from Christmas time till the conference happened in the beginning of March, that period of time we had frozen. Really, no one was able to take any vacation because we had a workload and the pressure of delivering for a major industry event. No vacation really was taken by anyone. Then COVID hit, and it was like, wow, we just went months of working without vacation, and now COVID hit, and no one wanted to take vacation anyway. So, what did I do for the team? I just said I support them. I didn't do anything special. I didn't force time off, mandatory, you have to take time. Rarely do I do that. But I showed my support, and it came down to specific individuals.
Yeah. So I have a different perspective on how things are approached, because I also have a team here at Phenom, and I felt I had to be a little bit more in front of them. I have been trying to take off when I can to try to model the fact that it's okay to take off. And also just sitting people down. I mean, we had a whole team meeting where at the very top of the agenda, when I was sharing my screen, I basically just said, just as a reminder, guys, we have unlimited PTO. Like, please take time off. And a lot of that had to do with, too, recognizing that there were quite a few people on our team who had to cancel events and vacations and trips. And it was like seeing that happen, and then them feel like I'm not going anywhere, I don't have to take it off, kind of prompted me to say, you still do need to take time off. Like, it's a mental break for you. It's about setting those boundaries for yourself. So a little bit different, but I think it does just depend on the team and kind of what you're sensing from them as well. So
Natalie, you may have forced some of those 50% of people to take off, right?
Yeah.
JD, have you forced anyone to take off? Have you said, I don't want to hear from you all day? What does that look like?
From my personal management style, have I during this period forced anyone to take off? There's been 2 occasions during this pandemic that I had asked someone or politely said or suggested that they should take time off. And I think it's really important to understand why. First, I feel individuals need to, in order for you to take time off, that's on you. It's on the individual to know where their limits are and to take time off. It's on me as a leader and a manager to know, to share with them so they understand and know there's no penalty for taking time off when they need it. That's first and foremost. I show my support, but I don't force you to take time off. There's workers that take time off all the time, right? It's different for everyone. You cut out 3 hours of a day, you go on a 2-3 hour lunch. Those are breaks that are built into the day. And I expect my team, my workers, to build their own breaks, take the time off when they need to. However, to specifically answer your question, so I'm not avoiding it, I have been in situations where I could see on someone's face in a Zoom meeting, almost like we're doing this call here, but in a Zoom meeting, and I could see the stress level, and I can see everything to me doesn't seem right. And at that point, to those specific people, I pulled them aside and said, hey, I really think you need to take today off, right? Tomorrow's Friday, just blow off Friday. You don't need to plan anything. You don't need to go anywhere. Just take a break. So I have done that in very limited situations, but I expect workers, after I've shown my support, to be able to make those decisions themselves.
Yeah, they're adults, right? So compared to last summer, JD, has your team seemed more burnout than last year? Like this year versus last year, do you notice any difference?
I don't notice any difference in burnout from my team. I consider our marketing team a high performance marketing team. We are always stressed. We are always under the gun. We are always asked to deliver more leads, more visibility, more PR, more everything to the business. You know, our sales teams, they never say give us less leads, not once. So we always have high pressure in our team and our organization. And I have not seen any additional burnout because of that. What I have seen though, is I have seen workers struggling with different situations within their home environment. Because in our environment, they're used to coming to the office most often, and now they're not. And now they're home, kids are home, spouses are home, significant others are home, roommates are home, dogs are home, cats are home. You have that. And I think the burnout's not coming from work. It's the additional stress that's around them, not necessarily the work that's pushing some of them to be, I think, a little more stressed than normal.
Mm-hmm.
Cats are always the loudest of coworkers, I've noticed, but they certainly are distracting. And I know, JD, you're coming from the marketing team perspective, right? But a lot of our listeners and followers are going to be from human resources. So Natalie, in your conversation with some of our clients that may be in situations where recruiters aren't hiring as much as they were, have you heard about a lot of burnout from that sector where it's, hey, just keep touching base, keep touching base? What have your conversations been like?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I have probably two different perspectives. So it's either the recruiters who they have so many recs in the healthcare space, they don't know what to do with that. You know, I was talking to a customer yesterday who was saying that, you know, typically a high volume rec load for her team would be like 500 recs. And just last week, it was over 600. And it was the largest load that they've had ever, right? So, you know, what we were starting to talk about and kind of go back and forth on is in our system, you know, what types of automations can we help with that? So, but I mean, that stress, I mean, you could hear it from her too. It was just, there's a lot of pressure on her team. And then the flip side of that coin is the customers who they're not really filling roles. They're on hiring freezes and things like that. And what's happening is sometimes their recruiters are being repurposed throughout the organization to fill roles that temporarily to help out other busier parts of the organization. So I think that's really interesting. Understanding and kind of seeing how different companies are taking those different approaches and kind of how they're supporting their teams going through that as well.
I think like any kind of situation that arises, researching it is always going to be best. Reaching out to your network to find out what's working, what's not. And JD, you had mentioned this a moment ago, and I'm going to steal Natalie's question. But you mentioned everyone's adults, right? And they can take time off. Have you noticed during quarantine, because of the added stress from external factors from work, have you noticed more time off requests or less? And Natalie, the same thing for your team, but we'll start with JD.
I would say up until this month, up until July, a lot fewer requests. I mean, significantly fewer requests, because none of the vacations that were happening in May and June were really taking place. Once in a while, an employee was asking off for one specific day, but outside of that, no. The vacation requests have been way down.
Yeah, I would say the same for my team. I've probably seen an increase in like half day requests and just kind of, you know, taking the afternoon or taking the morning. But it's a lot less like full week vacations and things like that. But I'm still on everybody about taking that time, whatever they need, you know, and if they don't feel like they need to take the time off, that's fine. But it's, you know, just a constant reminder that it's there and you can do it. So JD, we had a comment come in from Jeff. asking about, taking trips. And we kind of started to touch on this with Brad a little bit, that, this whole remote work situation is kind of allowing for people to travel without actually taking PTO, right? So what are your thoughts on this, and kind of what are your comments surrounding this kind of new situation we're in?
Jeff had 2 comments, and he had a few, which are really good. Jeff, I hope you're still listening to us. Yes, I certainly know employees. I know peer management as well that are taking this extended COVID time from shore homes or mountain places themselves. And I think that could give you a feeling of jealousy, right? I wish I had a shore house. But I tell everyone on this call, the day I have a shore house and COVID would hit again, I would be at that shore house, and I would be out there for the duration. You better believe it, right? So I think we have to be careful. We have to understand everyone is in a different situation, different circumstance, and what works for some person doesn't work for another. It's easy to get jealous in these times, but there's zero need for it. Zero, absolutely none. It's actually destructive if someone has jealousy, because you're measuring someone on where they've decided to take a break or go during COVID. But I bet those same individuals are working just as hard, if not harder, than the next person. And we're judged now, right? As managers and leaders, we judge on output and impact. We don't even judge on hard work anymore. We judge on results, we judge on impact, and it doesn't matter where you're at. Jeff had another question, and it was around, well, some employees could appear online a few hours a day. Okay, yeah, they might. As a leader and a manager, you know who's being productive on your teams and who's not being productive. And if you're a good leader, if you are an excellent manager, you are working with people on, again, their performance, regardless of where they're at. And if someone's only putting in a few hours a day, but they're not saying they're taking paid time off, that's something you're going to address as to the individual, and you're going to hold them accountable and responsible. It plays on the same exact theme as unlimited vacation. Well, unlimited vacation, could some employees take advantage of unlimited vacation? Sure. But I guarantee the employees that take advantage of unlimited vacation will be the employees who are not getting their job done. And essentially, they weed themselves out. That's a manager or leadership perspective.
JD, I think when you think about it in that sense, right, it doesn't matter where you're working. If it's in the office, you could kind of just be skating by just as much as if you were outside of the office. It doesn't matter where you're located, whether it's in your home, and that home is in the mountains, it's on the beach, or it's right next to the office that you used to walk to. So it's certainly an interesting topic. And one thing that I wanted to say was taking advantage of PTO is different than abusing it, right? Yeah. In that sense, where you can take advantage. I know that there was a stat I found that typically people with unlimited take around 13 days versus 15 who have it mandated. So that's taking advantage of PTO and not abusing it. Speaking of which, JD, have you taken any time off during the quarantine? What does your vacation schedule look like?
This is really interesting. The short answer is no. I have not taken any time off since Christmas, besides our corporate holidays. I don't feel burnt out. I don't feel the need to take time off for the sake of taking time off. Personally, in my entire career, I've never felt like, oh my gosh, I have time entitled to me, so I better take it. There used to be a phrase at a previous company I worked at, and that phrase was use it or lose it. And everyone took time off in December because they had all this time off, and they kept saying use it or lose it. And I never understood. I said, what are you losing? And no one could answer the question. They said, you're losing the days you're entitled to. And I would reply back, if I didn't feel I needed those days, if I didn't feel I needed the break, why should I just take time off to take time off? So, Devin, I haven't taken time off because I haven't felt the need to take time off. Have I skirted out at 4 o'clock? Spend a little extra time with my kids once in a while? You bet. Right? I expect all of my employees to be able to do the same thing when they feel they need to. Right? And the second way I want to address this too for folks is vacation, time off, health reasons, mental breaks. All of that varies by individual. It doesn't vary by team or corporate. It's by individual. And as an individual, some of the individuals on your team need days off. Some need entire week off. Some need just a few hours once in a while. And as a leader or manager, if you're encouraging them, if you're supporting them, they will make the right decisions. And once in a while, as a manager, you can encourage that. But I haven't taken any time off because I don't need time off right now. And I do have time off planned for August. And I will also take additional time off in November. But if I wake up any given day, if I wake up tomorrow and feel I need a day off, guess what? I'm going to take a day off. And I expect the same out of my team.
And JD, what weeks are those so we can plan on having you on the live stream again for that, just so we could write that down and get your T-shirt. Yeah, I'm kidding, of course.
Hold on. It's in August, but here's the reality. Here's the reality for a lot of folks. Natalie, you said it too. You took some time off, and it was hard not to pick up the laptop. I have never gone on vacation, ever. I've never gone on vacation and not traveled with my laptop, and I've never not logged in. To me personally, a vacation doesn't mean I need total checkout of work. I get on an hour or two of calls every day of vacation. That works for me. That doesn't work for other people. And so again, as a manager, you don't have to tell someone, don't disconnect fully. They'll make that decision on what's right for them. I can have 2 hours of work calls every single day of vacation and feel like I was on a complete disconnect versus 8 hours working. And so I just think that's interesting. There's people who are thinking, oh, well, I'm never disconnecting. Not everyone needs to totally disconnect. Again, it gets down to what the individual needs to recharge and refresh, not what a manager or a leader or a CEO of a company thinks that employee should do.
I think we're learning that firsthand, right? With everyone being remote and everyone having access to all of these digital files and communication. I mean, Slack is on my phone. I keep the notifications on even when I go on vacation. And then point of that being is if anyone needs something or I don't have access to it or they don't have access to it, I can point them in the right direction. And I think that's something that I'm sure recruiters do as well. If a candidate calls in and they want a status update or someone's looking for some particular document, having that little bit of security will only help. And yes, it may be a little bit of work here and there, but you still get to unplug. You're not logged in for 8 hours a day. You're stepping away from the screens. JD, this is
one more. This
has been awesome. Yeah,
you guys can't let me go. One more. It's interesting. As a manager, I've been criticized before because I expect my employees, when they travel, to also have access to their laptop or their phone or somewhere they can be productive if needed. And I call it the break in case of emergency, right? I ask that you take your laptop with you because in the case of an emergency, we need you to be able to break the glass, grab the fire extinguisher, and help. How many fire extinguishers have you ever walked past that the glass is actually broken in life? Very few. So for my employees, I'd like them to have it in case that emergency happens. Not to respond to everyday activities, not to have to check in their email, none of that. I have none of those expectations. But that one time an emergency happens and we need that one key employee that didn't save their file to the cloud that's on their laptop, well, we need that file. And that's why I ask it. And that rubs employees the wrong way sometimes. And it can be controversial.
It can be, but it's managing, right? And knowing your employees inside and kind of out, right? If understanding where their lines are drawn and what is expected of them, and setting precedences early. And I think you touched on it a little bit earlier, where every employee is going to be different with their time off. If it's they need a full week away from the office, or they just need a couple of hours. And what I've taken from this is that it's about having those conversations early, right? And not when they're already on vacation. But that doesn't, for me, JD, this was awesome. For those of you just joining us live, and you missed JD or Brad's interview, check out the recap. It'll be on YouTube, LinkedIn, everywhere. JD, any parting shots, any words of wisdom before we send you on your way and out on vacation in August?
I think Natalie said this very well herself too. As leaders and managers, regardless of whether you're in HR or any function, show your employees some support, especially now. Just show them support. Show empathy. Let them know you're there to listen to them. You know, something not talked about often is when you walk through the office and everyone was in the office, you get a sense of when someone's in trouble, when they're struggling. You just get that sense because you're walking by them and you feel that energy. While everyone's remote, you can't get that sense anymore. It's gone. And so I'd ask every manager, just make sure they're really trying to understand how their employees are doing right now. And although as much as I don't personally encourage a lot of time because I expect that, when you see someone or get the sense someone needs some time off or needs an ear to listen to or needs a little empathy, make sure you do that. Employees need manager and leader support right now. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter what role you have in the company. Make sure you're connecting and showing support in any way possible. It's critical right now.
Amazing parting thoughts. Thank you so much, JD.
Yeah, thanks, JD. We loved having you on.
Cheers.
All right, see ya.
All right.
That was awesome. That was great. So Natalie, we heard from Brad, right? C-level. We heard from JD and yourself. I don't want to sell you short there on the manager experience. And next up's the employees. So I know you weren't on the live stream last week. What'd you do? How was your vacation?
Yeah. So a little background. I was supposed to be flying somewhere. I was going to be visiting my grandmother for her 80th birthday in Florida. But Florida is a little touch and go right now. So we decided that it wasn't the best time. So I canceled my flight, hotel, everything like that. But I said, I still need that time off. I am not, JD and I could not be more different. I look at things and I need that mental break sometimes. So I took the time off. I did get drawn into a few things, but as soon as those things were taken care of, walked away again and just really had a nice, relaxing time at home. So it was really enjoyable, and I'm glad I did it, and I'm going to try to hold myself to doing it more often, even if it is just a half day here and there, because as you know, you've seen my calendar, it gets booked and it's back to back to back to back to back. So when that happens, it's like you have to build in those breaks for yourself. Just like JD was saying, it's, you know, everybody here who's working for Phenom and other companies, we're all adults. We have to make those decisions for ourselves and know what we need, because nobody else is going to make that decision for us, right? But I know that you also were on vacation as well, correct?
Yeah, I absolutely was. And before I jump into that, we just got a comment from Matthew O'Brien, who has worked remote since the internet made noise. So that was a long time ago, and I think I could repeat it, but I won't do that now. And he's curious to know what it's been like for employees who are now in this work from home environment. And I know, speaking for myself and kind of touching on what you had mentioned, is it's been a challenge, right? I infamously always went for a run on my lunch break. And when I moved to the work from home environment, I stopped doing that. And I found myself getting a little bit drained towards the end of the day. So I said, you know what, I'm going to carve time out of my calendar. I'm going to take that hour lunch break and not sit in front of my computer and eat while I answer emails or what have you. So it's certainly been interesting for me. but I don't have childcare to worry about. I have a dog, but he's very little, so he's not too much of a pain. What about you? How has it changed for you since we've entered this work from home?
So I definitely don't walk around as much, but if you notice in the background here, I'll just move my camera. I do have my exercise bike literally right behind me, and usually halfway through the day, I've changed into my workout clothes because it just helps me like get on the bike. Because the same thing, I wasn't moving around. You've definitely been on calls with me where my daughter walks in, usually half dressed because she's 3 and clothes are not cool. There's a lot more interruptions throughout the day. We're lucky enough that we do send them to daycare because the daycare is it's very outdoorsy, so they're not inside a whole lot. But it's been an adjustment, and it comes down to knowing what you need and really being in touch with what makes you a better worker, what makes you get your job done, but also what helps you relax. And all of that is connected. So however you get it done, if it's running shirtless in -4-degree weather, do it. I'll be on my bike.
No, it is definitely about knowing what you need. And I had a vacation planned in April. I was headed to Greece and it was canceled, which I'm going to be really honest here. That sucked, right? I was very excited to go. And as the months passed, April turned into May, May turned into June. My girlfriend and I were like, we need a break. We need to go somewhere. So different from what you did, which was stay home and kind of pop in and out of conversations. We actually traveled. We went out west, and it was an interesting experience. And I think more uncomfortable than we were expecting. Right. The way out was fine. It was, the plane was half empty. We felt safe. And then by the time we got away, it wasn't for us. So it almost didn't feel like a vacation in that sense. And I think that's also something that people need to pay attention to when they're trying to take a break from work is this going to be a place where maybe you do answer that Slack message or do send over that file that JD mentioned, but are you going to be at ease the way that a vacation should be? After our vacation, I felt like I needed another one. I was like, that was a high stress environment. But it was nice to come back to work. So everything changes, and it is all about knowing your limits. And that's the part of the reason why I started blocking time off on my calendar, was because my vacation didn't necessarily feel as much as a vacation as I wanted to. But yeah, it was a lot. I don't know, Natalie, any parting thoughts? We're coming up on the better part of an hour here. Thank you so much for the comments, by the way. This has been awesome.
Yeah, very interactive, guys. It was really great. No, I think, we got a lot of perspectives here. I think I learned some things just in terms of just intrinsically understanding what your own needs are. And hopefully everybody listening has a boss who trusts you implicitly to make those decisions. And taking care of yourself, it all connects, and it all, professionally and personally, all of that really needs to be tied up no matter where you are or what you decide to do. So I think, everybody who's still tuned in, make sure you're taking care of yourself. Take that time off if you feel like you need it, and hang in there, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much. See you on Thursday.